Is there a relationship between our fat intake and aspects of our mental health? Because I've been reading a little bit about that recently, and some people might be saying, okay, well, I'm just beginning to get it. I'm seeing that healthy fats have an important part of various different aspects of inflammation. But what about elements of our mental health? How does it play a role there?
If you don't mind, I'll rephrase it as the brain. This is important for
Fair
the
enough.
person.
Yeah,
And then
great.
we'll start with the simplest case that I think works really well. And then we'll get into mental health and maybe cognition. Infants are born, you've had children, they're pudgy little things, right? They got this beautiful little bit of body fat. They got a brain that's growing. In that body fat, there's a gram of DHA, okay? And that's kind of really nice because if they're not consuming it, DHA is also in human milk. But if for some reason, if this isn't working, they have a little storage that they can send to the brain for roughly the first 2 years of brain development. Works great. The premature infant isn't so pudgy, right? They're a little bit more thin if you look at them. And they've lost that last little period in utero for that brain development. Now they got to do it on their own outside the body. And they don't have that store of DHA to send to their brain. So we've got really good data. You know, when people started with formulas and these kinds of things, they didn't have DHA in them, and they added them to them. That if you supplement the premature infant with DHA, you can improve their IQ, improve their cognitive development, at least up to 5 years later in life by almost 5 IQ points. Works really well in the premature infant because I think they've got a challenge, they don't have the stores, and they've got to grow a brain. Fast forward to adults, we don't have to grow a brain, and we've got some stores, right? So we're a little bit better protected. And people have been very interested in the idea of like, hey, maybe we can, like the premature infant, improve cognition or mental health with this molecule DHA. When you get into the human literature, the observational literature, so the correlational studies, they look good, right? So people eat more DHA, they have better cognitive outcomes, less Alzheimer's disease, even some better mental health issues. The problem we have is then we try and do a randomized controlled trial where people get DHA or a placebo, and we try and improve their cognition or their mental health, and it doesn't really work, or at least it doesn't work that well. And so there's, multiple sides to this. In the observational studies, people are consuming these things for years and decades, and maybe that's what you need. Maybe it's prevention. The RCTs tend to be shorter. Some people will then say, well, the observational studies are correlational and fish is expensive, and people who spend more money on fish, jog more and go see their doctor more. So we're trying to untangle this. Works really well in the premature infant. As we move away from that, it gets a little muddier.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
helpful. And I am curious about cognition and
yeah.
mental performance. So, are there any aspects of that that appear to be a little bit more definitive in the research?
So if we take a rodent and we lower its DHA levels, it has impaired cognition. Okay, it can't perform simple tasks that rodents have, whether it's mazes or finding tasks. There's no doubt about it. The molecule is critical for that, and if you lower it in the brain, that's the issue. Now, I try and do this in a human; it's unethical.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're struggling, in the rat, you take the levels. Is this podcast on video too, or are we just
Yeah, it
speaking?
is. It's actually
Okay,
on
because
video
if
too.
I'm using my hands, it's not going to make any sense, right?
Yeah.
But in the rodent, we take them from here and we lower them to there, and they're cognitively impaired, no doubt about it. The problem is we don't know where humans are, okay? And so if you take the rodent from here and bring them up to here, you don't see an improvement. It's the downwards that's an issue. And so we're struggling with humans now saying like, hey, if I give you and you've got perfectly normal levels more, does it make it better? And it doesn't look like that's the case, at least not in adults, maybe in the premature infant. And so we're, people are trying to find these populations who maybe have lower levels, that there's some room for improvement, but it's been hard to do, right? So you can look at the literature and show me studies where it worked. And then I could say, hey, but this study didn't work. And we don't have a good answer to why we've got this heterogeneity in the literature right now. Some studies working, some studies don't. Could be a precision nutrition thing, could be something else. And we're we're trying to figure that out right now.
Got it. And is there any information that you have about the impact of all of this on mild to moderate mental health challenges like depression or anxiety? Does there appear to be any associations there?
So where it shows up kind of neatly in the literature is people go in and try and do a study in patients with Alzheimer's disease. Okay,
Mm.
it doesn't work in Alzheimer's disease. But then they
Wow,
turn
really?
around, yeah. But then they turn around and analyze their study afterwards and say, well, what about the people who came in with mild Alzheimer's? Sometimes they call it mild cognitive impairment. Okay, theirs seems to be working. So it's like, oh, that's kind of neat. Now, the problem with that as a scientist, and you'll appreciate this, is sometimes you design a study to do one thing, doesn't quite work, and then you do this secondary analysis of it, and you find something. And so people will disagree a bit on this. Some people will say, hey, that's awesome. We should do it in mild cognitive impairment to kind of prevent it. And then some of the more conservative scientists will say, you've raised that hypothesis. You need to go out and do it again in a new study and test it a priori with that being your endpoint, right? So it shows up there. It shows up in the major depression literature a little bit as working, but, and this is a wild thing, your brain has DHA in it and almost no EPA in it, okay? So some people say, oh, your brain's got a lot of omega-3s with an S on the 3. Not
Mm.
true. It's only DHA. It's
Wow,
wild.
okay.
But when you look at the clinical trials that seem to show efficacy for depression, it's studies where they give them EPA. And we can't figure that out, okay? We have no idea why that is. One thing my lab did, though, was we showed that EPA enters the brain, but we can't find it afterwards. So, yeah,
What?
it's wild. It enters the brain at the same rate as DHA, okay? They come in the same rate. But if you look in the brain, you can't find EPA. So our hypothesis, and I can't prove this, but we're working on this, is that EPA gets converted very rapidly into those same molecules that arachidonic acid did, and it kind of destroys the EPA, keeping it low, but it might be involved in regulating brain inflammation. And so people are working on that. The little bit of EPA that does accumulate in the brain accumulates in a cell called the microglia, which is the brain immune cell. So that's really wild. If you're going to put it in a place to stop inflammation, that would be the spot. So we're working on that. We kind of don't know what we're doing. This is the cutting edge, but yeah, it's a little bit of an unpredicted thing that the field has been stumbling into.
I'm so fascinated by that. That's great. I've got goosebumps thinking about how this is going to play out. That's really cool. I love that there's such a mystery. Like it shows up and then it just disappears. So you're like, where is this going? It's just simply not there anymore.
No, my colleagues did these studies initially in animals with a radioactive EPA, okay? And radioactive, so EPA is made up of carbons, and some of them, what you do is radioactive is nice because you just close your eyes and you measure it with one of those counters, right? And you put it into an animal and you see that the brain's radioactive, and they're like, oh, it's getting in. And you're like, but there's no EPA in the brain. And then when you go and do chemistry, you can find the carbons, but they're no longer associated with EPA. They've
What?
transformed into something else, and that's what we got to figure out what it is.
Okay,
And it's
that's really
happening
cool.
fast. It's happening in seconds, right? Same.
Really?
Yeah, really fast.